Hey there, guys. It's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and welcome to another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Now, if you grew up or lived through the 90s, as I did, not to date myself, but if you did, there's a good chance that you encountered some computer peripherals dating back to the 1980s. Maybe it was your family computer, or maybe it was computers at your school or something like that. But you might recall that 1980s computer peripherals and keyboards, especially, had a very distinct aesthetic. They were often really big and chunky and solid, lots of full size layouts with all the buttons. And they often had these color schemes that had a lot of beige and gray in them. I know for me, the first keyboard that I ever used was an IBM Model M. That was my family's PC keyboard, and it ticked all those boxes. It was big and chunky with these thick bezels, especially up along the top. And it had that retro, or what we now consider retro, beige and gray aesthetic. And what's old is new again, right? There's a big cultural shift towards 80s nostalgia right now, 80s and 90s nostalgia. And in the mechanical keyboard enthusiast community, there's a lot of love for those old designs. And what's more, I've been getting a lot of requests from you guys for more full-size keyboard reviews with all the buttons, including the numpad, the dedicated arrow keys, the nav cluster, the F keys, the whole bit. And I admit it's been quite a while since I've reviewed a full-size keyboard because myself, I have a preference for more compact layouts. I like the 60% boards or the 10 keyless boards, but I understand the love of the full-size keyboard as well. And so today I'm reviewing a product that hits all those things, brings it all together. Today I'm looking at the Ajazz AK510 full-size retro-styled mechanical keyboard. And this keyboard has a lot of cool retro styling to it. It's got that full-size layout, of course, with all the keys. It's got kind of a big chunky bezel. It certainly hits the retro aesthetic in terms of the color scheme, with lots of beige and gray on it. And what's more, it has retro-styled keycaps in a very unique profile. The profile is what a keycap looks like from the side. And the vast majority of keyboards sold these days have what we call OEM style keycaps. They have very straight sides. They have a very particular stepping as you go. They increase in height as you go towards the back or the top of the keyboard. And that's most keyboards sold these days. It's a very modern profile. The Ajazz AK510 has what we call SA profile keycaps, and this is a much older profile that originated, I believe, in typewriters back in the 60s and the 70s, and it has a spherical profile. So if you look at these keycaps from the side, they have this kind of rounded look to them, and the tops are scooped and sculpted like that. And it makes for a very unique retro look. And you can get SA profile keycaps as sort of special order sets. They're popular with enthusiasts these days, largely because of that retro aesthetic. But they're often very, very expensive, and you have to buy these kind of custom sets. It's very uncommon to see them integrated onto an inexpensive board, especially one coming out of China. And so what the Ajazz AK510 has is these SA profile caps made of PBT plastic, which is a higher quality alternative to ABS plastic that you commonly see. And PBT is much less common. You tend to pay quite a bit more for it. And these caps are shine through. They have shine through legends because despite all of its retro goodness, the AK510 also has a number of modern conveniences such as fully configurable RGB backlighting, the now popular side lighting, and software mappable key remapping. And so it kind of merges the best of both worlds, right? You get your retro aesthetic, you get your modern niceties merged into this one board. So, needless to say, I was very keen to get a review of it in here when I saw it available. And so the good folks over at Banggood.com were kind enough to send one over for us to look at here today. The Ajazz AK510 comes in at $75-ish. And if you are interested in what you're seeing as the review is carrying on, there is, of course, a link down in the video description where you can check it out for yourself. There's also a coupon code down there that will get you 10% off this board on Banggood. And I'm told that when I publish this video, it will be Banggood's Summer Prime sale, which has apparently a common coupon code that applies to all computer peripherals and will get you an even larger discount on this board. So there are links to that sale down there as well if you want to go check it out. Okay, now without further ado, let's take a closer look at the Ajazz AK510 retro-styled full-size mechanical keyboard. And here we have the Ajazz AK510 in box. And it's, let's call it a homely box. There's not a lot going on here, and it's not the most attractive packaging. Not gonna lie. It's just this raw cardboard. It's worse for wear too. It was beaten up a little bit in shipping. But it's a pretty big box, which stands to reason, I guess, because I'm used to unboxing much more compact keyboards, and it makes sense that a full-size keyboard would have a full-size box. But on this side over here, we've got the Ajazz logo, and then something in Chinese, perhaps the same branding in Chinese. It's kind of a shiny red, if you can see. There we go. Reflects the light. And then up here, actually, in the top corner, we've got, can't really get any closer to the camera than that, unfortunately, but a sticker with Ajazz on it, and a number, and a QR code, and a bunch of Chinese. So maybe that's maybe it's like a serial number or something, I don't know. Over on this side, things do get a wee bit more interesting. We have this cardboard slip cover, which depicts the keyboard or portion thereof. It's got some Chinese up here. It's got the model name down here, name and number, the AK510 retro mechanical keyboard. And then some more Chinese below that. You can see some of the keycaps. You can see the side of the board here. And you can see what the keycaps look like in profile. Kind of showing that off on the front here. They've got these little lines to kind of highlight the spherical profile of those SA keycaps. They look very interesting. Different than your standard OEM or cherry profile caps. Here, Ajazz branding, some faux wood texture. Nothing on that front flap. Nothing at all over there. Okay, on this end we've got a QR code and a barcode. That's a SKU. That's a Banggood sticker, I think, they put on there. Moving around, more Ajazz branding. Nothing on the spine. And then on the back, we've got a full-size image of the board right there. And it again says AK510 Retro Mechanical Keyboard. So you can see it is a full-size layout. Big, thick bezels. Nice and chunky. Thick, if you know what I mean. And then over here, finally, we've got some information that might tell us what we've got in here. Technical specification, Ajazz. It has dimensions and weight, 104 keys. Nothing about the switch type. It does say Windows compatibility. It does talk about the travel on the switches. But I don't see a brown switch denoted anywhere there, although it could easily be somewhere there in Chinese. Because this is a brown switch model. It is available with, I believe, brown or blue or black switches, I think. I could be wrong about that, but you can check on Banggood's website. And that's it. That's all. Just looking at this end to see if it says brown switches. It does not. But I'm told this model should have brown switches. So, okay. So, very simple, plain packaging and not a lot of information. Not very flashy. But it's what's inside that counts. So, let's open her up. Nothing in there. Just a simple cardboard slipcover. Yeah, this box has definitely seen better days. But hopefully the product within has been protected adequately. Come on, there we go. Okay, so inside we are greeted by a plastic cover, hard plastic, to protect the keyboard, and underneath that hard plastic it looks like it's within a plastic bag, so it's kind of double protected. In terms of padding, it's basically just cardboard, although there's this one strange strip of foam at the back here, which is kind of odd. It seems a bit superfluous, but there it is. Other than that, it's just cardboard all around, which is good because it's easy to recycle. So let's lift off this here plastic cover. It is Ajazz branded. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got Ajazz kind of engraved on it. Alright, it's got a notch cut out for the cable, naturally. And we've got some little pack-ins here. It looks like a user guide and a wire keycap puller. Take a look at that in a second. But let's just get everything out of here. So, got this clear plastic bag on top, or enclosing the board. Let's just lift this out. Looks like the cable comes back here, as is customary. It's tucked away back here. This board has a non-removable cable. I'd kind of forgotten about that. That's too bad. It's affixed. That is too bad. Just a piece of foam, I guess just some added protection there. Doesn't hurt. I already like the sounds this thing's making. And there she is. And we will put the keyboard aside for just a second. Well, realistically, probably more than a second, probably closer to a few minutes. Where can I put it? Put it over here. Space is at a premium in my filming area. Okay, and just a plastic bag. Nothing special there. And that's everything inside the box. It is very bare bones. And it's not the prettiest packaging ever. Okay. Let's take a quick look at the meager packets. We've got a little plastic baggie here. Tiny little user guide, and the wire keycap puller, which is always welcome actually. I much prefer the wire cap pullers to the clip type. I've said it before, but these are less likely to damage your keycaps, you know, scratch them. And I find them easier to use as well, to be totally honest. So, and then this teeny user guide. Ajazz AK510, First Blood, Ajazz Cross First Blood. It's the first time I've seen First Blood branding on here. I have no idea what that refers to. And then it's just like a little fold out here. Pretty chintzy. It says, the lighting effect of the keyboard, adopt loop switching mode, total 14 light modes to switch. Show the horse racing lamp effect at boot time, then enter the user's last function and lighting mode state. So I think that's saying it's got a boot up animation, and then it'll just switch to what you had last. Custom lighting modes, backlight, brightness, colors. Yep, that's pretty straightforward. Not much else to say there. It's a combination of Chinese and English, as you can see. On the back, it does have a warranty card, and it's naturally all in Chinese. So, I see the number 12 in here though, so I reckon it says 12 months. That would be pretty typical. 1 year. Okay. That was fairly underwhelming for pack-ins. No extra keycaps, nothing, no stickers. I'm spoiled by Drivo with that super blingy sticker and all those extra keycaps. Those things are nice. But that was a substantially more expensive package, of course, and keyboard. So let's look at the board itself here, since that's what really matters. Let's just pick it up here. Okay. This thing's heavy. Holy cow, this is heavy. Like, it's probably the heaviest keyboard I've ever handled, honestly. Like, it's got some serious weight to it. It's also very solid. I don't feel any hollowness to the chassis, and it feels quite rigid. Like, normally I save the flex test, but let's do a little flex test here. Let's see, does it flex? Will it flex? Oh, very minimal flex. Very minimal flex. Almost nothing there. I reckon there's probably a big steel plate in here somewhere that's giving it all that weight and rigidity. So here is the Ajazz AK510 in most of its glory. Honestly, it's so big, it's so thick and wide that I can't quite fit it all in frame without moving it too far back for you to really see it. So I'll have to just make do as is, but as you can see, full size layout. This sort of beige and gray color scheme that it's got going on. It's got these big, chunky, well, actually on the front it's not such a chunky bezel. It's a little smaller, but each side we've got probably, half an inch at least of bezel there. And same on the top here. We've got these little metallic accents, one on each side. And aside from that, there's really nothing ornate about this design. It's very straightforward. We have our 3 scroll lock keys here. We've got kind of this framed inner surface. The outer surface, outer edges, are a matte beige plastic that should repel fingerprints nicely, but I'm noticing that the interior spaces are glossy plastic, which, you know me, I'm not super big on glossy plastic because it picks up fingerprints, but at least it's pretty limited surface area here. You can see what I mean there. Shines a bit. But that's not a deal breaker. Of course, we've got these lovely, lovely looking SA profile keycaps. They feel a bit harder, if that makes sense. The plastic feels harder than ABS, and that makes sense because PBT is a bit harder than ABS, a bit brittle, more brittle. And the alphanumerics actually feel a bit shinier than do the modifiers. The modifiers have a slightly more matte texture to them. Double shot legends, of course, throughout. They look a bit primitive for double shot legends. I would say they're pretty sharp, but they're a bit chunky. But they don't look bad. Now, if we were going for the truly retro look, the legends would be centered on each cap. So a lot of the old typewriters and really old keyboards had centered legends. These ones are not. They are offset, but they still look pretty good. And overall, I'm really digging the look. Really digging the look. The font, I think, is fine. It's a nice typeface for the legends. And I love these gently scooped tops on these keycaps. We'll pull a couple of keycaps off in a moment and take a closer look. But for now, we'll turn it over and take a look at the back. I do want to point out quickly here that the secondary legends are pad printed. So the primary legends are double shot, secondary are pad printed, which is a little bit disappointing, but par for the course. It's to be expected, and it's really only on those media keys, honestly. Up at the top, those media shortcuts. Around the sides, this metal accent that we see on the front here loops or kind of wraps around the sides, and this is a side lamp. There's RGB LEDs in there, so the light should shine out of here, and this kind of acts as like a weird stencil of almost that sits over top. Don't know why they would have done it that way, but stylistic choice, I guess. This is a little bit, this is a glossy surface again here, although you're probably not going to be touching it much. I guess this helps you. Well, not really. It doesn't really give any place to pick it up. I don't know. This is just interesting styling. The sides actually kind of break away from the retro styling of the rest of the board in a way, don't they? They add this sense of sort of modernity to it a little bit. They don't look bad though, I don't think. And then I like this angled front here, and then this angled back. It makes this kind of sharp look, which I kind of dig. I think it looks alright. Around the back here we have the single affixed USB cable. Bummer that it's not removable, eh? I don't know. It'd just be nice. It's just, I don't know why you wouldn't make it removable. It's preferable. But then again, I guess if you're going for the true retro styling, those old boards did not have removable cables, so it's a little more true to the old school. And the cable itself looks like pretty standard, probably 3 or 4 feet. Like a vinyl PVC probably coating, soft ferrite choke here, and then a gold-plated USB Type A connector. No special branding on the housing, but at least the color is all matching the rest of the board, so that's nice. Alright, let's look at the back. Back. Okay, so the back actually has a little bit more going on than I thought it would. Namely, it's got this textured surface, which you probably can't see very well, but I'll try and show you better in a second. It's got little rubberized feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I suppose. And it's got the flip-out feet as well. I'll actually show you there. It's got these flip-out feet, as one might expect, with rubberized feet of their own. It's got these holes up here, right at the front. Those are usually drain holes. I don't know if that's the case on this board or not. I don't think it advertises being splash-proof or spill-resistant, but they could very well be. Usually when you see holes like that, that's what they're for. Got a QC Pass sticker, Ajazz Retro-Mechanical keyboard, big serial number there, some certifications, really nothing else. Gaming keyboard designed by Ajazz in China, it says. And a QR code. But what I wanted to show you is this textured surface. It's kind of neat, isn't it? You can see it's got this band down the middle of texture. Really no purpose for it because you're never going to see it. But it's kind of a nice touch, I guess. You can see it kind of comes in underneath here. And that's about it. That is pretty much everything. So it's an interesting blend of retro and modern, and I kind of dig it. Like when you look at it from the front here, you know, the first impression is undeniably retro. It looks like something straight out of the late 80s. But when you get in closer and start looking at the details, you notice these modern flourishes, such as these side lamps with these metal pieces, and just the general design of the sides of this board. And also these kind of sharply angled front and rear edges. That feels fairly modern to me. Okay, so let's pop off a couple of keycaps here. We will use this wire cap puller, and traditionally I usually pull off the arrow keys, so let's do that. You can see that the design is it's inset into the board, so it's not like the floating island style or the floating style keys. The caps are all sunk into the board, so the lighting won't spill out. It should stay kind of contained to the blocks of keys, which is a stylistic choice, but it is truer to the retro style. Okay, let's take off this cap. Okay, so we do in fact have a brown switch underneath, some light pinging, as you can hear. In fact, all the switches have some light pinging. More so on the modifiers than on the alphas. I like the action of these switches. We'll take a closer look at the switch in a second, but first of all, golly, look at these caps. Look at just how thick they are. That is some thick PBT. I can barely flex it. That's got to be well over a millimeter there. That is a high quality keycap, my friends. You almost never see them that thick on these sort of budget-oriented boards coming out of China. They often skimp on the caps, but not the case here. And you can see it is double shot. We've got this plastic exterior, PBT exterior, and then the translucent interior. Big, very thick stem in there as well. All of this looks very high quality, with the exception of those unfortunate pad printed legends. You can see they kind of well, maybe you can't, but anyway, trust me, they're pad printed. Yeah, they're raised off the surface slightly there, but the arrow is double shot. But what a lovely cap! That is just nice matte texture, slightly scooped, as you can see. Just cradle the finger, and there's that spherical profile, right? They're also very tall, much taller than your average OEM style cap, and certainly taller than Cherry, because Cherry profile caps are actually even slightly shorter than OEM. And it looks like they're all the same row height, actually, except could be that these this top row, let's just pull off one of these guys. Could be that this top row is even a higher profile, taller profile. Hard to tell. Let's do a little comparison there. Yes, it is slightly. If you stack them up here, so it's hard for me to do, but that top row is ever so slightly taller, I think. Yeah, looks like it. And let's pull off one of the alphas here, just for the sake of looking at the other color of cap, because they do feel a little different, eh? There we go. They are a bit shinier, a bit smoother, but still nice and thick. Super thick. Dummy thick, as the kids say these days. Right? No, those are fantastic. The quality of these keycaps is actually shockingly good. And like, you would pay, if you were buying a set of caps like this in a group buy, you would easily pay $100 US for a set of nice, thick PBT SA profile caps. The fact that they're double shot shine through caps is just the icing on the cake, because I don't think you can get double shot shine through SA PBT caps anywhere else. So that's pretty cool. Let's take a quick peek at the stabilizers here, just to see what they're all about. They do seem a little on the rattly side, maybe. Yeah, definitely. So underneath we've got, a white metal backplate. Might be able to see it in there, back in there. And then these white stabilizers, which definitely rattly. They do not appear to be factory lubed, which is a bit regrettable, but so be it. But you could put a little bit of lubrication in there and that rattle would probably disappear. Let's just pop this back on here if we can. This is proving slightly more challenging than expected because these stabilizers are, like I said, kind of rattly. Not aligning properly. There we go. And you can even hear, you can hear how rattly those stabilizers are. So that's too bad. But the rest of the keys have a very solid sound to them. Oh, I like that enter. There's a nice thok to it. It feels and sounds nostalgic in some weird way. I don't know, it's hard to say, hard to explain, but okay, last thing I was going to do for you guys here is pop these caps off again here. We'll take a quick peek at the switches. And by last thing, I mean last thing before we go and test out the lighting and all that stuff. All that jazz. All that Ajazz. Terrible. So you can see here, we've got these brown switches, translucent upper housings, because they're RGB. I assume the LEDs are surface mounted on the PCB below, and the translucent housings allow the switches to transmit that light. And I'm just looking at it here, and yeah, just like the last Ajazz board I reviewed, the AK33, these are Ajazz branded switches, which is very interesting to me because I do not think Ajazz manufactures their own switches. What I have read online subsequent to that AK33 review is that Ajazz rebrands switches from a company called Zorro. And Zorro switches are evidently pretty bargain basement switches, pretty cheap options. But in my experience, they've been really good. I was incredibly impressed with the smoothness of the Ajazz or Zorro blacks on the AK33, whatever they are, wherever they come from. I thought they were really nice and smooth. And I will say again, first impressions, I'm really impressed with the smoothness of these Ajazz browns. They have a little tactile bump that's maybe a little more pronounced than a Cherry MX Brown, perhaps. On par, but they are smoother. They're definitely smoother than MX Brown or an Outemu Brown, which is great. At least they feel that way here. Sometimes it's a little deceptive when you're pressing individual switches versus when you're typing. But of course, after we look at the lighting and the software, I will be doing the typing test. So that will be the proof of that one way or another. And of course, I'll be testing it extensively outside of the video. A little bit of pinging for sure. But the switches feel nice and they look nice. Alright, well, we've had a very thorough look at the board here. And I'm really loving these caps. They are just excellent. So solid. Just that quality. Like I cannot flex it. Along with the rest of the board, actually. The rest of the board is very heavy, very weighty, very solid feeling. Really can't wait to type on this, actually. But first, before the typing test, it's time to go look at the lighting and the software. Let's go take a look. All right, so here we've got the Ajazz AK510 all lit up, and from this view, with this lighting, it doesn't look like a retro board at all, does it? It looks like a modern gaming mechanical board. So it can kind of do both, you know? It can be the reserved retro aesthetic board, or it can do this. So this is the default lighting that occurs when you plug it in. It looks like it's the classic rainbow ripple. It's kind of racing along at a pretty high speed, but doesn't it look nice? My first impression was, dang, this looks really good. And that's largely, I think, because the PBT caps are of a light color, sort of a light beige, and they actually transmit some of the light through them and diffuse it. So you get this really, really smooth but vibrant looking gradient. You can see what I mean. And if you are seeing any flickering, of course, I always put this disclaimer in here. There is no visible flickering in real life. It is just interaction between the LEDs and the shutter speed of the camera. If you are seeing a flicker, I try to minimize it, but sometimes you can't entirely eliminate it. So let's look at some of the options here. We hold down function, and it looks like function left will slow it down. So let's slow it right down. Okay, so you might be able to see when we hit the bottom end, the lowest speed, the lock indicator lights in the top right of the board flash, which is pretty typical. If we speed it up again, wow, racing along. That's the fastest. So it looks like there's, what, four or five different speed steps there. Let's slow it down a bit. Gotta find our chill. And brightness is controlled by function up and down. Pretty sure. Okay, so that's as dim as it goes. That's as bright as it goes. Honestly, I don't notice a big difference. I'm pretty sure that's brightness that is controlling, but anyway, there it is. I'll keep it on the brightest for now. Function and escape turns off the backlight entirely. Nice to have that. What else do we have here? Function and print screen. Oh, okay, so that'll change the color, but maintain the effect. So we can cycle through a variety of solid color ripples. And back to the rainbow. These are all the hardware controls, of course. This is done driverless, but there is a software driver, which we will check out momentarily. Function scroll lock does something too. What's that all about? Ah, so this changes our effect. So we've got the sine wave. We've got just solid rainbow. I guess we could go function print screen. There we go. Now we've got solid in various colors available to us. I like the way it changes the color in kind of a wave coming out. It looks nice. The colors are very rich. Really nice. I feel like I say this about every board, but this in particular, something about the inset keys and then the material and color of the keycaps, which diffuses the color. Okay. Okay, so this is the breathing. This is cycling through various colors. Oh, we've got shooting lines there. I don't know what's happening here, but it kind of hurts my head, so we're going to move on. Oh, this is like a rotating rainbow. Oh, that's very cool. Look at that. That's beautiful. It's a rainbow color shooting out from each key that you press. But it looks really nice. The animation's very smooth. This is like a raindrops kind of thing. Each key fades away as you press it. Oh, racing light. That's a little extra. And we're back to the waves. So that was a reasonable selection, but not huge. And then function pause does something. What did that do? Nothing, apparently. I'm gonna have to try that out, or I'm gonna have to read up and figure out what that does, because it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Strange. Oh well. Let's get back to the rainbow wave. I like the rainbow wave. But, of course, as I mentioned, there's a side light on here as well. And if we go function insert, that side light comes on. And I think, okay, so that looks to be cycling through the various colors. And I think we can press function insert again to change it. Did it change? Oh yeah, now it's a breathing red. It's hard for me to actually see from where I'm sitting, so I have to kind of lean over and look at it. So it looks like we've got breathing. So breathing of various colors here. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Do we just get a solid option? We do. Okay, so there's also solid in each of those colors. If you don't want that breathing effect. So you can see what I mean about that middle piece. It kind of is overlaid on this light on the side, and then, you know, it's just part of it shines through. It's an interesting design. Not quite sure why they did it that way, but... And then we're back to off. There you have it. I'll keep it on the rainbow breathing. So that's a handful of options for the side light, but not a lot. I'm hoping that there will be more granular control for the side light in the software. I've yet to see a keyboard that does that, but I'm hoping this one will break that trend. But that's pretty much everything. We've also got, you know, media shortcut keys with the function button, but because this is a full-size keyboard, pretty much everything exists on the primary function layer. Right? There's no need to hold down, you know, do function key combos for most things. And there's no wireless, so there's nothing like that to worry about. So we've basically seen everything this board has to offer in terms of functionality, except for the software. So let's take a look at the software. And here is the software. And I had to go on a long journey to get this software. I won't go into all the details, but basically I'll tell you later what it required, because this is definitely going to be one of the cons that I list for this board. I did manage to find the software eventually on the Ajazz website, but anyway, typically Banggood hosts it, and I was unable to get a working copy from them, so I had to go onto Ajazz's Chinese website and muddle my way through there to find the software. Anyhow, I did find it. I got it working. If you want the software for this board, I will put a link down the video description to the Chinese page on Ajazz's website where you can download it, because that seems to be the most reliable way to get a working copy of it as of right now. It's less than ideal, but at least you'll be able to find it if you want it. So the Ajazz software here is pretty bare bones looking. It has key assignment options. So you can click a key and choose the function. You can set it to a different keystroke if you choose. You can set it to run a macro, which you record with the macro editor. We'll look at that in a moment. You can set it to a multimedia function, or you can just reset it to its default. So you can't bind it to mouse functions, for instance, which is a feature I've seen in some other software like Drivo's Power Console will let you do that. But we have a good array of options here nonetheless. And it's just this visual depiction of the keyboard. You click on what you want and rebind it as such. It's a little goofy. You have to check key assignment, enter key assignment, and you check lighting to get the lighting. I don't know why they're check boxes. But that's okay. One thing I will say is that I did not have to create an account to use this software. You just download it and install it and run it, and it runs quite happily. No internet connectivity required. It doesn't even try to connect to the internet. I don't believe there's any way to check for updates from within the software or anything, so it's pretty plain. But in some ways that's kind of nice. It's a lightweight thing. And honestly, the UI is, quirks aside, seems pretty functional. So for lighting, we've got a whole bunch of options. Everything we just went through, basically. Everything that existed in hardware is available in software as well. Except there's also this additional game mode, which appears to just light certain groups. We've got FPS, CF, I don't know what that is, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and QQ mode. I don't know what that's all about, but anyway. Of limited use, but yeah, we've got all those options that we had earlier are available here. And of course we can control the speed here, which is nice. Slow it right down, speed it right up. There are 4 different levels of speed. Ooh, that's a little much. Let's keep it on 2. And we could do solid colors as well. Let's go steady, I think. Now, I don't know if we can do per key. I don't see per key as an option here because I can't click on any of these keys. It looks like it's just kind of all or nothing for the steady option here, but you can specify the color. You choose random color, in which case it's rainbow, or you can pick the color. So we've got a sort of palette of preset options here, or we've got full RGB control. So let's make it sort of ready orange. Yep, that certainly looks ready orange. Let's go sort of a deep blue here, or maybe slightly purple. I don't know, I'm colorblind. Shh. Ooh, that's very nice. That was very vivid. I like that. What we are lacking here, however, unfortunately, is side light control. So there's no way to match your side lighting to your backlighting here. So you have to manage the side light through hardware. And, there's limited options that match here. You might just be better off turning it off in this scenario, which is disappointing. Definitely disappointing. What about sort of a yellowy? Yep, these colors all seem quite true to what I'm seeing here in the software. So that's a good sign. It's got reasonable color accuracy, I guess. That white is a bit bluish. I guess that's a gray that I changed it to. Let's just try plain white. Yeah, the white has a bluishness to it, but I bet you could change that by cutting out some more blue. I don't know. That makes it a little more yellowy. It looks quite yellow here, but it definitely does warm it up on here. That's closer to a true white, probably. Anyway, not perfect, but pretty good. Pretty good, honestly. come back to the neon stream. You can't change the direction of these effects, unfortunately. It's just speed. And brightness appears to not be available through the software here either, interestingly. Or was it? Oh, it is here. It's available here on the steady. Okay. But not on the neon stream. Regardless, we have a profile option here where we can save a new profile if we want. We can load it. We can export a profile and share it with people, I guess, if you really wanted to. And then we have the macro editor, which looks to be pretty straightforward. You can record and press keys. It'll save it. You can do like a rapid fire, it looks like. You can automatically insert delays between each action of a specified length. And if you select a particular macro here, let's just create a new macro. Let's just call this test. And let's start record. Let's call it. So right now it's putting 1 millisecond delay between each action. You could turn that off and have it just insert as much time as you leave. But if you want it consistent, let's put in 10 milliseconds, say. Oops. And then let's start record and let's go TY. Oh, see, that didn't. Oh, interesting. Well, let's stop. See, I would have thought it would insert the delay as specified. I'm not quite sure how this works out. Ah, there. Okay, we can edit delay times directly. Interesting. And you could also insert an event into this macro, such as, mouse button. There you go, left mouse. Okay, so pretty rich, lots of options there. I'm not going to go into more detail here. You can delete individual items off the macro list, but let's just delete that altogether. And that's it. That's literally everything. You can also restore the keyboard to its default settings from here. Well, that's funny. That's not what I got the first time I plugged it in. I don't know why. I don't know why it restores to that, but whatever. Function delete, holding down function delete will do the same thing on the keyboard. And yeah, that's everything. There's no options, can't check online for updates. There's no side lamp control, unfortunately. It's relatively clean. It's pretty easy to use. It is very light on features, but it certainly does get the job done. So I don't think it's a super strong, piece of software, but I don't think it's a detriment either. So that's all of that. So the next step, my friends, is the typing test. I know this is everyone's favorite part, or many of you, because you get to hear what this thing sounds like. So let's move on to the typing test. And here we are, after having tested out this keyboard. We've looked at the lighting, we've looked at the software, we've had the typing test. You guys got to hear it in action, and I have used it extensively for a few weeks now. And I have to say that the usage experience with this board has been really, really good. And I know at the beginning I said that, I'm a fan of compact layouts, and I am. I remain a fan of compact keyboard layouts, but I will say it's been nice having that numpad on occasion as I'm doing work here, especially data entry work for my research and stuff. Having that numpad is actually a real boon. So I've been enjoying the layout, although it is very wide on my desk because it's the full size layout. Then it has those thick bezels on either side. And so I have had a bit of that conflict in terms of the ergonomics, trying to keep the keyboard centered so that the alphanumerics are centered, and comfortable for me to type on without shifting my mouse like way over to the side into a place where it's uncomfortable. And that is the drawback of a full-size board, which is why for many people I recommend a 10 keyless or smaller. But that aside, that's just the nature of the beast. No way around that. That aside, it's been a really good typing experience and usage experience. Those keycaps, man, those keycaps, I love them. I really, really like them. The PBT material is a little bit more brittle than your ABS material, which is, I think, what prevents them from shining up in the same way as an ABS cap. But it's really resistant to accumulating finger oils and just general grime and dirt. And so they stay really, really nice. They feel good under the fingers. And they have a certain rigidity to them that makes them feel really good. And those SA profile caps are really a pleasure to type on. This is actually my first experience using SA profile caps. They sit a bit higher than your standard OEM profile, but my favorite part is that the top of each one is gently scooped, symmetrically scooped, and so it kind of guides your finger right into the middle of the keycap. And it's subtle. It's a little bit more noticeable on the J and L keys. I don't remember, the ones that often have the little bump on them, for orienting on the home row. Those ones are actually slightly more deeply scooped. They also have little bumps in the middle, but overall, I really like the feel of typing on SA profile caps. And it actually makes me wonder why it is that they fell out of favor, because as far as I'm concerned, they feel as good, if not better than, the OEM profile caps that we're so used to seeing these days. So anyway, those keycaps are an absolute treat. They're nice and thick. They look good. The legends illuminate nicely. The backlight on this keyboard is very, very nice also, as you saw, and it shines through a lot of the lighter colored caps to give this very diffuse glow, whereas the darker colored modifier keys don't have that light transmission, so it only comes through on the legends on those ones. I will say the legends themselves look a little bit primitive in terms of the double shot injection quality. It's pretty easy to see that they're double shot, which is good from a build quality point of view. It means they will never wear out, but some of them are a little bit chunky looking, but I honestly think that sort of works with the retro stylings of the keyboard, so that's not really to the keyboard's detriment stylistically. In terms of the switches, once again, I'm weirdly impressed with these Ajazz switches, or Zorro switches, or whatever they may actually be. You might recall from my Ajazz AK510 keyboard review way back in the day that I found those Ajazz black switches to be shockingly smooth, like really, really smooth. And I found something similar with the browns on this board. They have a very nice, pleasing, smooth action with a subtle but noticeable bump to them. And in my opinion, they feel superior to a Cherry MX Brown because they are less scratchy. They have a smoother action. It's closer to something like a Gatoron Brown, but I find they have less rattle and less play than a Gatoron Brown. So despite what the internet may say about these Ajazz/Zorro switches being sort of bargain basement switches, I really like typing on them. I found no quality control issues with them. There were no dead keys on the board, and I found that the actuation force consistency across the board felt very even. I didn't notice anything that was amiss in that regard. So I have nothing bad to say about these switches. In fact, if anything, I'd say they're a little bit better than what you normally get out of an Artemu Brown or a Cherry Brown or what have you. So the typing experience overall was really, really positive. The backlight was good. The feel of the board, very, very solid. And those keycaps, perfect. I love them. They're great. So that's the typing experience rundown. Nothing to say here about wireless or anything like that because, hey, this keyboard doesn't have it. So at this point, as is traditional, we will run down the pros and the cons of the Ajazz AK510 before I give you my final verdict. And as is customary, because I'm a positive kind of guy, we'll start with the pros. The first thing that I really like about this board is very obvious and is really one of the selling points, and that is the awesome retro aesthetic. Now, I know that it's probably not for everyone. There will be a segment of the audience who looks at this thing and says, that's gross. That just looks old. But for me, there's a big nostalgia element incorporated. And I think this board really finds a nice balance between retro stylings that kind of call back those older stylings of the 80s and early 90s, while also maintaining a somewhat modern edge. It's not quite as chunky as a board from that time would have been, and a lot of the choices in terms of, for instance, the indicator lights and certainly the sides of the board look more modern than what you might have seen back then. So I think it strikes a really good balance of evoking that era without actually slavishly adhering to the aesthetics of that era. And of course, contributing to that is the choice to go with the SA keycaps, the SA profile caps, which look fantastic and really help tie this board together. They're going to get their due in just a second as well. But overall, the retro aesthetic of this board really helps set it apart, make it unique from other offerings in this price range, and is very appealing to me. Second thing that I want to call out about this board is that it feels really solid. You pick it up, it's got a weight and a stiffness to it. It's got very little flex, and overall it's just uses premium materials like that PBT in those keycaps, and it feels like a very solidly built keyboard, just like those older 80s keyboards that it's trying to emulate. Speaking of retro stylings and solid build quality, let's call out formally those excellent keycaps. I know I keep coming back to them, but honestly, they might be the biggest selling point of this board, and in some ways the biggest surprise for me, because I had never typed on SA keycaps before. Wasn't quite sure what to expect, but this board has fantastic keycaps. They're made of a nice, thick PBT material. They're double shot, so the legends will never wear out. Granted, the secondary legends are pad printed, but that's pretty common. They're shine through, so you get that backlighting coming through if you choose to use it. And the SA profile is really a pleasure to type on. It looks awesome. It's got that retro aesthetic because of those curved sides. And it feels great under the fingertips because each one is lightly sculpted to just cup the tip of your finger ever so slightly. And overall, it's just a really excellent set of keycaps. It's also a very unique set of keycaps because, honestly, I don't think, as far as I know, there does not exist another set of SA profile double shot PBT shine through caps. There's lots of PBT SA profile caps, but none that are shine through as far as I know. So if you want to show off your RGB backlighting and you want SA PBT caps, this is kind of the only game in town. And honestly, the prices that some people pay for keycap sets, this board is almost worth the price of admission for the keycaps alone. That is a shocking thing to say, but it's kind of true. If you look at the cost of keycap sets in some group buys, they can get very expensive. And so the fact that this board has such a unique and high quality set of caps on it at the $75 price point is really shocking and quite impressive. So overall, really big fan of those SA Profile PBT caps. And the great thing about those shine through caps is that they allow the vibrant backlighting to really shine. Pardon the pun. Like I was mentioning earlier, the legends look pretty nice. They are sharp, if a little bit chunky, but the light shines through them very nicely. And then you also get this transmission of light through the PBT material itself on the alphanumeric keys, and it kind of diffuses that lighting, so you get this vibrant but still soft looking colorful light. And I will say the LEDs on this board get very, very bright. Brighter than I want, actually, so I keep the brightness dialed back a step or two usually. But that combination of the nice sharp legends and then that sort of diffusing light coming through the caps on the alphanumerics looks really good. And then the modifier keys are made of a darker PBT material that doesn't transmit any light, so you only get the light shining through on the legends. Overall, makes for a really nice look, especially for some of the rainbow modes, like the kind of rolling rainbow light. It makes it look very colorful and smooth. That's the nicest part about that sort of diffuse look. It's very smooth looking. Of course, if you're purist, you can turn off the backlight and that's no problem. Same goes for the side lights. But I kind of like to have them on just like a plain white backlight, because I find it's a nice compromise between that retro aesthetic that I remember, but the functionality of a modern board. So overall, a really nice backlighting implementation. And finally, I want to call out those switches on this board, whatever they may actually be, whether they're Ajazz or Zorro or wherever they come from. They feel different, and they feel different in a good way than what you get out of a Cherry MX or a Temu Brown switch. They're much smoother than either of those switches. You don't get the scratchiness of a Cherry MX Brown. The bump feels very similar. It is subtle but noticeable, but combined with the smoother actuation makes for a very pleasant typing experience. So big props to the switches on this board, even though they are of a cheaper, less known make. I think they do a great job of feeling really good. I will shout out here, or call out, the stabilizers may be less good. They're a bit rattly, especially on the space bar. So I was less thrilled about that, and I neglected to mention that in the typing experience just a few minutes ago. Thought I'd call it out here. But the switches themselves, very, very good. As you know, however, few products are truly perfect, and I do have a few cons to mention about the Ajazz AK510, although this is a very short list. The first of them is that cable is non-removable. So non-removable cable is a drawback, in my opinion. It would be, for instance, really nice to have a USB Type-C connector and to be able to get like a nice, thickly coiled gray cable to really bring home and tie together that retro aesthetic, because a lot of those older keyboards had coiled cables. Unfortunately, not doable with this board. Another con I want to call out is the limited side lighting control, and this appears to be a pretty common problem across most boards with side lighting. In fact, I think every one that I've tested so far usually has a handful of presets. I think this one has about 10 or so, which is fairly generous, I guess. They're all accessed through hardware. There's no software level control of the side lighting, and just like the Drivo boards that I recently reviewed, if you've dialed in a custom color for your backlight, you're not able to necessarily match that with a custom color on the side lighting, and that's disappointing. It'd just be nice to be able to have them matched. So unfortunately, fairly limited side lighting control on this board. speaking of software, I had a heck of a time finding the software for this keyboard. I alluded to it earlier, but normally Banggood does this thing where they host the driver software for the keyboard on their, well, not on their website, they host it on Google Drive. They link it on the product page. They did that with the Ajazz AK510. However, the link was broken. I got an error on the Google Drive page saying something about violating terms of service with hosting this software there. So needless to say, it was not easily accessible there. I contacted my Banggood representative. They tried to send it to me. We managed to eventually get it to me, but it didn't work. It would not install properly. It threw an error when I tried to run it. So ultimately, I went on a bit of a scavenger hunt myself and found the software for this keyboard on Ajazz's website. That said, Ajazz's website is all in Chinese, so I had to do some Google Translate, a little bit of digging around to find it. When I did finally find it, it downloaded without issue, installed no program, ran like a charm, and strangely, the software itself is in English. So, no problems once I actually got a working copy of the software, but attaining it in the first place was a real challenge, and this is on both Banggood and Ajazz. Banggood really needs to have their own FTP server. Like, surely a company that big can host their own crap. Relying on Google Drive just comes across as unprofessional and is evidently unreliable. And then Ajazz, for their part, it would be really nice if they had an English language site, especially because they are selling more and more, it seems, to the English-speaking world, because it would make it much easier for me to access that software in the first place. So once I got the software downloaded and working, it worked fine. No problems with it, although it is a bit bare bones, but no issues. It was just finding it in the first place was a real challenge. So what then is my final verdict on Ajazz's AK510 retro-styled full-size mechanical keyboard? Well, aside from that short list of quibbles that you just heard, it's very hard to find much of anything to fault about this keyboard. Honestly, it's got very solid build quality. It's got nice RGB backlighting and side lighting. And it's got those excellent PBT SA profile shine through keycaps that are very unique. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can find caps like that anywhere else. And so in some strange way, those keycaps, if you like them, are pretty much worth the price of admission alone for this keyboard, which is a remarkable thing to say and quite impressive when you think about it. So if you're looking for a full-size keyboard with a retro aesthetic and you're not willing to take the plunge and use an actual retro keyboard, maybe you want some of those modern conveniences like RGB backlighting or per key remapping in software, these kinds of things, then the Ajazz AK510 is the board for you. It is an excellent option, and I highly recommend it. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of another relaxing review. If you like the keyboard that we looked at here today and are considering picking one up for yourself, there is of course a link down in the video description. It is available for about $75 on Banggood.com, and if you use the coupon code that you find down there and pair it with the sale that Banggood has going on right now, you'll get a pretty decent discount on that board as well. And you'll support the channel, by the way, by clicking through on that link, which of course I very much appreciate. Special thanks to Banggood.com for sending over the review sample that we looked at here today. And of course, special thanks to all of you for watching. I hope you found it informative. I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having you all back here next time for another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Bye for now, guys.